Okay. Welcome. Sorry, we had a technical glitch right as we were going live, so I apologize, everybody. But we're here now, and it's so great to see you. I can see those number counts already racking up. So thank you guys so much for being here. You will not regret it. We have a great conversation happening today. I am Diana Richardson. I'm the Community and Events Director here at Content at Scale. I want you to drop me a quick hi in the comments. Tell me where you're from and how you've been using AI so far. I'm so curious to hear how you all have been using AI. So share, share, share. As you can see, you got a comment right from Jeff Joyce. He is our director of AI. So I'm sure he is also very curious as to how the world is using AI for their marketing and content. So he will be moderating our comments today while I get the pleasure of having the live conversation with our incredible guests. So our webinar today is chocked full of really, really steamy AI questions. So I won't lie, I have been very much looking forward to having this conversation around these questions for quite some time now. So I'm stoked today is finally the day. But you're not here to hear me yammer on. No, you are here to hear from my amazing thought leaders that I have on deck for you. So I'm going to go straight into their introduction. So our first guest is an incredible marketer. I was looking at his LinkedIn profile earlier, and he's been hands-on with PPC since 2005. And now he runs his own end-to-end marketing agency called BlackTruck Media and Marketing. He's a personal friend of mine, and we've been friends for quite some time now. So please help me welcome Jason Dodge to the webinar. Hey, Jason.
Hello. Hi, Diana. Thank you so much.
We were just chatting before we went live about being in Michigan this time of year, and no snow yet. No snow?
No snow. We're in the awkward, have to wear a coat or a sweater in the morning, and then you want to wear a t-shirt in the afternoon. So, but we'll get there. Give it a few weeks. We'll get there.
Oh, okay. And then it doesn't go away until when? June?
Yeah. We're not that bad. No, come on, climate change. Do we want? That's this forum? Are we talking about that? No.
Sure, go ahead.
March, probably March. We'll have winter weather through Miracle March. So
yeah. Great. All right. Well, our second tremendous guest today has one of the most well-suited, I think, first entries on their LinkedIn profile, I think, that I've ever seen. His first entry on LinkedIn is as the Director of Technology Development for Tulane University. So I just thought that was the most perfect fit for today's conversation. So since those days, he's been and still is a contributing columnist to Search Engine Land. He's the CEO of Search Influence, or was previously, and is now the CEO and founder of Upscribed, which is an agency that specializes in scalable advertising. I recently met him in person in Austin at PubCon, where he spoke in tandem with the president of Content at Scale, Julia McCoy. Please welcome Will Scott to the webinar. Hey, Will.
Thank you for having me. I also, one of my current entries on my LinkedIn profile is that I'm a locomotive consultant.
I saw that too, and I was slightly perplexed.
Yeah, Google it.
You got it. I didn't know if it was maybe one of those fun titles, because sometimes companies have Director of Happiness and things like that. So I didn't know if it was some play on that or whatnot. So, but I did notice it.
You know how SEO is dead? Right? I mean, we've heard this, right?
I heard
SEO
that.
is dead. Yeah.
Only once a quarter do we hear that.
The first time that I heard that professionally was in 2008. And so I wrote a blog post about the story of the locomotive consultant. And so if you Google locomotive consultant, we're not at the very top of the page, but we're still on page 1.
Nice. Okay. Someone just asked in the comments, can they Bing it instead of Googling it?
I don't Bing.
No.
Ever since
we've gotten to that stage yet where we can Bing things.
Ever since I could get the best that ChatGPT had to offer elsewhere, I stopped Binging.
Nice little segue. So I think what's really interesting about having you both on this webinar today is both of your history, your longevity as digital marketers, because you've both been working in this space for quite some time. So you've seen all of the previous game changers of the past. So I think you'll have a really fascinating input and perspective around AI. So I'm just excited to get into the questions with you both. I have a few little housekeeping notes, and then we're going to get straight to the questions. So, as you guys probably guessed, we can see your comments. So, I have my colleague Jeff, as I mentioned before. He's here with me. He's moderating the chat. Chat it up. He's our director of AI. If you've got questions for him, go at it. But we're also going to do a section of live questions at the end of the webinar. So I'm going to keep my eyes on your questions as we're going, and we can ask Will and Jason at the end whatever you're curious about too. So be sure to ask your questions. Let me think. Before we get to the questions, I'm going to do a little fun little experiment with our AI detector and some content that Jason and Will have put together. They don't know about this yet, so it's a surprise all around. So we're going to have a little fun. Okay. We do have, what was that? Sorry. I'm too excited about it. I'm like, I can't hear anything except for like the excitement in my own head.
Oh, good. Let it roll.
All right. Well, we're going to get straight into those questions then. So let's go. So my first question to you both, and whoever wants to answer first is totally up to you guys. What are some of the common content uses for AI?
Mm-hmm. You want me to go first?
Jason, yeah, Will's pointing to Jason.
Oh man. All right. I think the most common, especially as of late, utilizing it primarily from a brainstorming perspective, trying to iterate on blog post ideas, resource ideation, that type of thing. It seems to be probably the most popular use case and most popular use case by myself, as well as colleagues and I would say team members of BlackTruck, is utilizing it more as a tool, coming up with, again, different outlines and how we can take that and then go and iterate. Beyond that, I would say I'll kind of leave it at that and let Will chime in.
Yeah, I think my content team is definitely using it that way. I myself am abusing it in other ways. One of my personal favorites is something that I've dubbed the ChatGPT SEO skyscraper. And anybody who's been around SEO for a while understands the concept of the SEO skyscraper. It was posited by Brian Dean several years ago. And so what I've been doing is I've been identifying the top ranking pages for a keyword that I'm interested in. And I will then have the machines write a synopsis of every one of those pages. And then I'll take those synopses and I'll feed them back into the machine. And I'll say, tell me what the high points are. Tell me what the surprising points are. And then I'll wrap around that with a little bit of human, right? Human intro, human outro, a little bit of human, maybe interpretation of the machine's interpretation of the machine's synopsis, and that then becomes a skyscraper blog post. So if you go Google the phrase ChatGPT SEO skyscraper, you'll see what I've been up to.
Wow. And like, again, see, this is what I love. I love like the workflow processes that kind of have been like being revealed in the world of AI, and how people have found like this way to work it into their day to day and really make the most out of it as not just a tool, but like as a whole process management thing. So I think that's really interesting. Any thoughts? Back to you, Jason. Any thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a good way too, right? To think about it from a process improvement perspective. And my take really is like not looking at it. And we're talking primarily, about ChatGPT and large language models, right? Even though we all know that AI has been around for a very, very long time, certainly not new in the ad tech space. It's actually been hanging out in the background and in the shadows and driving a lot of what we do. We've leveraged it for a while. It's just things like ChatGPT, Google's Bard, whatever Google's going to do with SGE are now like just the shiny mainstream objects. Other areas too, right? I love the idea of the ChatGPT SEO skyscraper, also too taking presentation transcripts, video transcripts, talks, and doing the same thing of basically saying, hey, give me the highlights, give me the key takeaways, give me the key points, right? Same thing could be said for, I used this example a while ago when before Meta owned Oculus, and you're creating maybe products for Oculus and you're trying to figure out which way to go. It's like, go and look at all of those videos, but scrape the transcripts and have it pull out like how many different times they mention certain things. And what you realize is like, oh, they're worried about scratch and dust. Great. Do you have a product that solves for that? Because clearly that's a problem, right? Like you have these major companies who are funneling tons of money into their product and their product research. what are the big things that they're talking about? What's their reason why? Like not what it is, but why are they talking about it, right? You can now, what used to be manual, you have to go through that and do some n-gram analyzation and be somewhat of a data scientist or a hack at that. Now we have some tools at our fingertips that allow us to do that relatively quickly with some reasonable prompt engineering.
Well, and I was going to just sort of tacking on that, the really cool thing is that now if you look at, just talking about ChatGPT, and I think Claude does this also really well because Claude, for anybody who's not using it, allows a much larger context. So you can dump just a ton of content in there and have it analyzed. But now in ChatGPT natively, you can bring in spreadsheets, right? Or better still, if you're using Google Sheets, you can install the ChatGPT plugin and you can be doing conversions of data right within that directly from the AI. So I think that the number of use cases for this are as varied as the number of people who are playing with it.
That's right.
But this is just like written word content. And for me, one of the things that's super interesting is images, obviously, right? I mean, people are spending a lot of time with, I spent a lot of time with Midjourney prior to DALL-E 3 getting installed natively into ChatGPT. But the ability to just pound out images that are exactly what you want to be talking about. I've said that I think that stock art as we know it is going to be in like significant decline because of the just ready access to images. But the other thing that's super cool, if you think about like the idea of taking this written word content, is taking that written word content and turning it into video scripts, and then using some of the video AI tools to build like videos for publication on YouTube and other sources where you can link back to your original source content.
Like it's just like exponential. Like in that conversation, you all just talked about sentiment analysis. You just talked about generative AI. Like you just talked about like 7,000 different things that this technology is now like enabling us to do in this like more efficient, scalable, less headachy kind of way. So I mean, it's definitely, I said like game changers in air quotes earlier, but I really do think like this technology really is leading us down an incredible like path as marketers, as content creators, and making us more versatile, making things faster so we have time to be more creative and not necessarily having to art direct something or having to hand sentiment analysis something, and we can do things a lot more creatively and faster with this kind of technology. So it's just so interesting. I think all of the benefits you just both highlighted in like 10 minutes talking about it. All right. Question number 2. So how do the two of you know, like if a piece of content has been written by AI, and is it a bad thing?
You know what the real problem is?
What?
Sometimes mediocre humans fail the AI detectors. I'm sorry, I don't mean mediocre humans. I'm sure they're lovely humans, but they are mediocre content creators, right?
Writers, yeah.
And so we've actually seen it where when one of my team has written something that they have written, but it just happens to be not super inspired, and it'll fail the content checkers. I mean, I think that the question of does it matter? Google has said, create helpful content. And in fact, my business partner shared with me this morning an article in NPR where Google has said they're going to start tagging videos on YouTube if they are AI created and they look realistic. But when you read 2 paragraphs down, they say publishers are responsible for stating that they're AI. So what does that tell you? Google can't actually tell if they're AI.
It's trying though. But I do think that's an interesting point too, because we're getting on that precipice where those images and those videos are getting so realistic that it is getting difficult to tell the difference. So I think like it's good of them to kind of keep on top of that now. So as so we don't get into like the fake information or
Mhm.
oh, Elvis isn't dead, or because we can see him, or something to that effect as the AI gets that good, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think, well, I'd read that too. There was their announcement on cracking down on a lot of that, of the fake video, fake imagery. A lot of that as we lead into, here in the States, right? 2024 is a major election year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that those of us who are in Marcom need to be, have kind of a good eye on that stuff and what that could mean, both contextually, organic side, news sites, as well as the ad side too. It's gonna get a little weird here in terms of like detecting it. If we're working with an outside resource, a contractor, like a contract writer on a technical subject matter or something like that, I would say we also have some processes and procedures in place that basically say, like, you either have to disclose your use of it. So we openly discuss with people, we openly discuss with our team what our rules of engagement are going to be with any level of AI and how we're going to disclose that to clients, obviously, and the brands we work with. We kind of expect that from anybody that's working with us up or down the food chain, if you will. And there are some reasonable tools out there, GPT-0 and stuff is one we've used for a while. I know Content at Scale, you guys have one also that I've played with. And I find them fascinating. Exactly to Will's point, like, how does it know unless it's learned off of the same information? And also too, if you are a mediocre writer, I would be concerned for AI. But if you're a really exceptional writer and really on top of the subject matter, then maybe not so much. And you might view it more as a friend instead of a foe, right? And but yeah, the content, the detection of AI, I think is difficult. Where my concern comes in the detection and the disclosure is more in those highly regulated fields, right? Healthcare, finance, insurance, and things like that. So making sure that we have some guardrails up in that space.
Well, and you bring up a really great point. That's actually been a really hot topic. Our team was at Brighton in San Diego last week, and it was a very common topic to talk about the privacy and safety and security of AI and that data and the inputs and the outputs. And so it's just been, that has been on the top of conversations lately.
I think it came up in question the other day about somebody had asked me where we're starting to head down this path. And I don't know, well, if you guys have seen this yet, or Diana, you've run across use cases yet where, let's see, the actual thought leader, the actual subject matter expert that has the information, probably the information where the LLM is learning from, is now being out gamified, out botified, if you will, by competitors coming into the space, utilizing AI generated content that is now potentially winning out. So this idea now of I think there's AI detection, but then there's also, how do we know the true source material, right? And that's something that nobody, I think, has a handle on. Certainly nobody knows how to answer for it. At least we see integrated into the Bing search side of it that they will give credit where credit is due-ish. But I'm just, it's like we're learning from the learners or learning from the makers, right? And who was the original content creator on it? No.
Yeah,
I think there's also the risk of the snake eating its tail, right? Where at some point, when we start publishing so much AI generated content,
that's right,
and the language models are being trained on what we're publishing online, it becomes self-referential. I mean, so the sort of internet echo chamber gets much more focused when we can sort of create our own rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah, and I mean, and if we're talking about this scalability and the quicker we can produce this content too, it's good. It's going to be very interesting, I think, to see the evolution of maybe not necessarily quality control, but like I don't know what the right word is that I'm trying to say, but like just the flow of it and the level of accuracy or interest or quality of it, because I hate I hate the word quality because it is subjective. It's a subjective word, but like, especially when it comes to like the quality update that Google went through recently. Anyway, I have my own thoughts on that, but
Which one? September, October, or November?
yeah,
Right.
like exactly. So it's just, so I'm personally just very, very curious to see the output and like what we do with all of this information and the evolution of it. But you
Well, I
guys
think
also kind of, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Jason alluded to something that I think is really kind of important to think about.
Yeah.
When we look at these, what Google has been calling your money or your life categories, YM, YL, right?
Mhm.
And so these are medicine, finance, right? These things where wrong information can do real damage.
Yes,
And
that's right.
then we buddy that up against this idea of experience, expertise, authority, and trust. I mean, what you're starting to see a lot of sites doing is kind of like, back to the political thing, they'll have articles on their websites, publishers will, that are endorsed by authorities, where that authority is that expertise of the authority is verifiable. And so to that end, arguably, if one is working in that space and they are using AI, then it behooves them not just to have kind of lip service to the Google's EEAT, but to in fact have somebody who is an authority on the subject, whether by expertise or experience, put their stamp of approval on it and say, I'm Dr. So and so, and I approve this message.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually even had someone comment in the chat about scientific papers too, kind of hitting the same issue that you're just talking about, Will, like being sourced by real like scientists or somebody who has this pedigree. But then you guys, both of you have brought up really good points that lead me to my next question. So like, if I've used an AI content tool to write something for me, then what? What do I do next? Because do I keep it? Do I edit it? Do I publish it? Like, what's next?
Yeah, I think this is definitely classic SEO background here. It depends, right? I am of the school. I think there are tons of use cases out there and examples where people have taken it and tossed it out there, on the web verbatim. Will talked before about kind of how he might iterate on it, add some human flair to it, and go to market. I'm of the approach that a lot of those things just lack. And this is one thing that AI lacks and is a concern. It's been a concern when I go and speak at universities, and it's a concern of professors I've talked to and moving forward in the professional workspace is what it lacks is critical thought. And that's something I think somebody participating in the comments and chats talked about. If you take the world of PT, I wrote something, but I still need an expert. I still need the expert to be the critical thought process piece in there, because AI doesn't necessarily understand intent, right? And it doesn't really, it's not fully immersed in maybe your market or your industry. So to still have deep critical thought and say, yes, that is highly accurate or that is inaccurate, you still need to fact check it. And make sure that it is good and relevant. But to use it from an outline perspective and to iterate, whether it's organic content, whether it's ads, certainly in ads, again, if it doesn't go against your brand standards and it doesn't make a false claim and you have it bang out 15 different iterations of a headline, you plug those all into responsive search ads and let it rip. And then the data tells you what people respond to. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, now, Google's doing it now in the back end of Google Ads already. They have been. So like part of it is, nope, it's okay. But then the other part of it is you still have to have critical thought on the subject matter, understand the audience to be able to make decisions as to whether or not you want to move forward with that. Is that right for my audience? Is that really what I want to portray and move forward with?
Mm-hmm. All right. Before I explode, go ahead, Will.
No, go for it. I think this is I only say let's, I think we've beaten on this one pretty well. And you've got some other great questions coming up. So
we're going to hit like our lightning rounds really quick because we've been chatting about the first couple of questions so much with some great information. I'm going to hit you guys with the lightning round here in a second. But no, Jason, you hit like our philosophy on AI to the T, because we have this whole concept of AIO, AI optimization, as like the next level of SEO. And we have this whole, Julia, our president, again, has this beautiful like craft method. She spoke about it in her presentation with Will back at PubCon, and it perfectly encapsulates the fact that AI content is not done for you. It's not turnkey. It's just almost like your draft. So it saves you that brain space to get a draft out. But you absolutely have to have your personalization come in, that fact checking aspect. And what AI can't always do or can't really do is, and especially from your perspectives, because both of you are in the agency space, is it's difficult to know your clients' customers. Like for me, writing content as an in-house person, the AI just has to know like my space and my customers. But when you're writing on behalf of somebody else and having different customers on that side, then it gets a little more complicated, because you might not always work with the same types of clients who don't always have the same audience base or the same goals or the same intent, like you said, Jason. So there's still such this high level of personalization that has to happen with your content after you've used. Yeah.
I know that this is, I know that this is native to content at scale, right? But one of the things that's interesting to me about these, the ability to create a custom GPT, is that, which is a new feature within ChatGPT for anybody who's not been paying attention, is that you can start to define your own personas and then use those personas to actually do your creation. And an example that I've used a few times is I have a client who's a plastic surgeon who's very particular about the way that he represents his craft, right? And so I wrote a story about him, which I fed to ChatGPT, and then I said, based on that story, please write about this topic, and here's a few bullet points of things that I'd like you to hit on. And I took that, copied and pasted into a Google Doc, sent it to my client, and I said, what do you think about this? And he says, you know me so well. And I said, the machine interpreted what I know, and this is what came out. I mean, so I think that I'm a fan of the concept of the AI sandwich, which I think is very much, in line with AIO. And that's that, the human takes what only a human can do and feeds it to the machine. The machine does its thing, and then the human comes along behind and edits, fact checks, adds, features. I mean, this is one of the things I love about the content to scale product, not to shill or anything, but the fact that so many of those features that you're going to find in good content are already there, like tweetables, like call outs, like that kind of stuff, that to me, whether it's AI or human, it makes a better quality piece of content. And therefore I think it's going to be more engaging and more likely to get used by humans and loved by Google.
Yeah. And thank you for the content at scale shout out, because we do offer that inside the tool already. So because that's so true, and it's customizable. And in our tool, you can have a project per your client. So in this case, you'd have like this project around this plastic surgeon who it's a very particular field anyway. I have experience working with them too. And so it's really important that you do nail down those nuances, but the fact that you can save it and you don't have to recreate the wheel every time you're trying to create something for them. So it's very cool how we can do that too. And it doesn't always have to sound the same for every client or every piece that you're writing. All right, I want to get into a myth busting lightning round, because I think we've hit on some of these topics, but I want straight up like yes, no, it depends kind of answers to this. I don't think any one of you has said it depends yet. So we need at least one in this webinar. All right, so we're going to debunk this myth. So will AI take over content creator jobs? Will, yes or no, or maybe, or depends.
I think Jason said it best. Mediocre content writers have to be most concerned.
Yeah. And actually we had an interesting comment from in the chat from Farnaz, who's actually on our team. And she said that most of the content that got dropped by the helpful content update in Google was either non-helpful, outdated, thin, and not related to AI. So it was like human created content, but it was like all of the not great content standards that we've been battling with all of these years anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. AI is factual. I mean, we've talked about this a ton right now.
No.
No. AI lies.
Far from it. We there's enough use cases out there that it's made, and there are countless other people aside from just, myself and Will, have spoken on stages, nationally, internationally about this, that no, it makes things up. Again, you have to fact check it. You still need to be tied in with a subject matter expert on it. Iterating on a blog topic or resource does not make you, and it's never made you, a subject matter expert.
Nice. All right. AI content is all plagiarized. Yes, no, or it depends.
No.
Mm-mm.
Great. All right.
What is real anymore?
Well,
is this real?
what is plagiarism, right? I mean,
That's right.
I was an expert witness in a case where a new entrant into a rather esoteric field effectively hired a team. They hired a team in the Philippines to effectively copy all of the content of my client, and so there was very little of it that was lexically identical, right? But the structure and some of the turns of phrase were close enough that a PhD linguist out of Hofstra was able to say, this is the same content and this is derived from that. And this was 2020. So they didn't use ChatGPT. This was just the proverbial, 100 monkeys banging on 100 typewriters and recreating the works of Shakespeare.
Wow.
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 Unfortunate.
Like, wow. I mean, interesting. And it went all the way to court.
Yep. And they settled pretty quickly because about 3 weeks later, my client announced a $500 million exit, which sadly I was not part of.
Dang it. No, but I think it opens up a really interesting conversation too about internet law and how that's going to evolve, and copyright laws and all sorts of things like that. My husband and I were actually just talking about that last night, like where that all hangs, and if we're, using these inputs to get these outputs, like where all that lies. So I think the internet law piece of this is going to be really interesting to watch and keep an eye on those things evolve.
Yeah.
All right, so I want the audience to get your questions ready for Jason and Will, because I do want to spend some good time. There's been a lot of really great conversation. I've seen you both replying to comments in there, so thank you guys for doing that. But I really want to get some really awesome questions ready. But while we do that, so I'm going to let you think on it. Let's type them out and get them in there. I'm going to do a slight little product demo and a little experiment with some of the content from Jason and Will. So let me share my screen really quickly. Okay, share my screen. Okay, so Content at Scale does have an AI detector. You can see it here. This is the paid for version. We just upgraded it about a month and a half ago. So there's this really cool, fancy new version. And so I wanted to run some of Jason, Will's, and our content through it to see where we land on the AI versus human.
Oh, this is where the skeletons come out. I don't know if you guys knew that or not.
No, this is a total surprise to them. So you're welcome. So here's a great piece from BlackTruck Media, which is Jason's agency, about leveraging ChatGPT for SEO. So we're going to run it through the AI detector just to see what happens. There are two ways you can use the AI detector. You can input the URL and you can copy and paste the content, which I'll show you how that works in just a second. But let's see how Jason's content works up. Okay, hold on. There we go. Scan for AI content. And let's see. Human probability. Great job, Jason. Look at all the green. So within the tool,
We appreciate
color code, what could potentially be written from AI. So that's what the red means. But it looks like 90% of this is nice and bright and green. So I don't think there's a huge concern there. Now, if you wanted to fix that, you could highlight it. You can ask our Amy and she can, I don't know why that says that, but you can actually rewrite it if you would like. Okay.
Fascinating.
Now we're going to go over to Will. So Will also has a really great piece about ChatGPT. So why
Great
not?
read. Yeah.
Why not see what that happens? So we're going to reset the AI detector. We're going to paste that in there. And we're going to check for AI content. And let's see how Will.
I'm guessing a high probability here
Of human or AI?
of AI.
Human! Good
That's some
job.
exceptional AIO, is what I'm telling you.
There you go, right? See, you made the system work for you. Lots of green. So great work
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
All right, but we're going to put our money where our mouth is. Okay, we're going to run content at scales content through this too. we gotta prove our own point here. So I'm going to show you how you don't have to necessarily do the URL. If you wanted to say this was in like a Word doc or something, you could copy the content and paste it into the AI detector. So let me go back down here to the top of the article and paste. And then we're going to scan this for AI content. Let's see what happens. Okay. Human probability. All right. Okay. All three of us know what we're doing, I think. That's really great to see. You also have this feature right here to rewrite the AI sentences, like I mentioned before. If you ran it through it, you got a couple little red blips here and there. And you wanted to fix that, you certainly could. So the feature's right there within the tool itself. And then you can make your AIO optimization tweaks. And then if this wasn't a published piece, you could go ahead and publish it. And that is how that works. Ooh, my goodness. Let me stop presenting because that's crazy. All right. Well, thank you for allowing me for my little experiment. I thought that was really fun. All right. Now let's get some questions from our audience for our last 20 minutes. Let me see what we got.
I'm just glad you picked one of my more human pieces.
Yeah. I mean, you guys know what you're doing. So great work. Okay. Where were some questions? I know we've had some questions back in the chat. Hold on. I'm going to scan through. I wasn't paying very close attention to the chat while I was listening to you guys. So 1 second while I look through for some questions.
There was a question about persona generators.
Okay.
And I know, Jason, you answered with one. For anybody who catches this on the replay, I saw a friend of mine at PubCon, Michael Bonfi, who demoed one called character.ai, which I thought was really cool. You give it some attributes and it came back with a persona, and he used it for exactly what we're talking about, which was he was trying to look at the way that that different cultures would approach a product, in this case, an adventure backpack, right? And so the premise was, how would you market this if you had $0? And he walked through that process. And one of the things he did was he went and he figured out, like, what's the disc profile of somebody from Japan versus somebody from Switzerland, and then built personas around those individuals, and then used those personas and their disc profile to create content that spoke to the nuances of those cultures, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I think culture is a missing piece in a lot of content and in a lot of marketing, right? We get so myopic and focused on, who the audience is and what, that we forget culturally what their why might be. And when we do that, then that's not being helpful. That's not going to get rewarded. And that's something, I'm fascinated. I have this up on my screen. I'm going to have to check it out. But like, that's something that right now is not being replicated and not being, I don't think, uncovered, by AI really well right now.
Well, again, it requires iteration. But you could imagine taking that into a tool like Content to Scale, right, and building a project where you've got that as part of the foundation. And then, one would hope that everything you create going forward, or if you're not a subscriber and you want to do it in a custom GPT, you could build that into your persona. And then obviously you want to sort of check it, right, with somebody who has deep cultural knowledge to avoid offending anybody. But I think it's a great shortcut as opposed to how one might have had to do it in the past.
Very interesting. Okay, so one question I want to pose to you guys, that this comes from Lisa. She says, any suggestions on how to protect your existing content?
There are
Yeah, go for it.
the engines have come out with you can block
Block it.
the crawlers of the AI machines.
Mhm.
Well, the problem is if you choose to block Google's AI machine, you'll also block them from showing you in various aspects of search.
Yep.
So there's a bit of a stick with that carrot.
And I think, and the same could be said for other crawlers too, right? If you see like crawling tools, whether it's a SEMrush, Ahrefs, or something, there are also, when you block those, there can be some negative impacts too, because they share similarities in the way that the data is being crawled. I think I had kind of posed a question back to Lisa actually in the chat on this. Is like, I think the question is to ask yourself, like, why? Like, is there a fear of it? What's the deal? Because the other side of it is we talk about AIO, but then there's the other side of it that is thinking about where do you as a brand come up in those conversations with an LLM like ChatGPT. We do a bit of work in the travel and tourism space. There's a lot of people that are using it for trip planning or recipe creations. Hey, I've got these 4 ingredients in my house, and I have I've 2 kids under the age of 10. Like, create something for me. I want to plan a weekend getaway in a certain part of a state. We're genuinely interested in looking at it because it's less an organic search play. This isn't about rank and file. It's about visibility for a brand and visibility for my client, that they even have a seat at the table and they are a part of that conversation. That's equally important. So I absolutely want that type of content to be crawled and to be accessed.
Well,
Well, and if you want to get
sorry, well, go ahead.
if you want to get really geeky about it, you can look at the
Yes.
concepts of vectors and chunking, right? So if you look, for instance, at what would have previously been a rich snippet in a Google search result, and similarly in Bing, but which may now be being served by either Bing GPT or SGE, you can start to deconstruct what is the chunk of content and what is the surrounding content that enables it to be shown over other content. And so I think Jason's completely correct that as much as it's important to control our intellectual property, it behooves us to think about what is the way that these AI machines are digesting content, when we believe that whether explicitly or implicitly, that is going to be what's driving search going forward.
Well, and it just pulls in deja vu from voice optimization. And because like very much everyone wanted to be that source when someone asks, what's the best kid-friendly restaurant in XYZ city that I'm visiting? Like it very much reminds me of that.
Well, and the challenge that I'll make to on the consumer versus marketer, and I'll get off this soapbox, is like the majority of the talk and the discussions that's being had about AI and LLMs are from those of us in the marketing field. Now, if you were to drop a consumer in front of a screen, and 2 screens, and one screen was Google for search or Bing, but let's just say Google, and we're going to compare it to ChatGPT, and you have them do the same exact search, I will argue every day of the week that 9 times out of 10, they will not be happy with what they get out of the AI tool. It's not designed necessarily for that yet.
I think it depends on what they're searching for, right? If I'm searching for a local business product or service, then I'm going to be less satisfied with what I get from the AI tool.
Right.
If I'm searching for an answer to a question, right? Like I published this somewhere, but I was interested in, for a presentation I did on Monday at State of Search, I was interested in technologies that had become ubiquitous, right? And the idea of ubiquity in technology. And so I was also testing out, I have the ChatGPT app on my phone. And so I was testing out how well it would do if I spoke to it. And so I literally asked the ChatGPT app, for examples of technologies that have become ubiquitous. And the response was so much more satisfying than anything that I could have gotten from Google. And so I think that the use cases are different, right? I mean, products and services, absolutely. The taxonomies that Google has built around those over the past 2 decades plus are going to be more satisfying in that regard. I mean, presuming, of course, that they haven't stuffed their own content over the top of the actual valuable content, which is a challenge. But for answers to questions that are not so easily sliced and diced within a taxonomy, I think that the LLMs are more satisfying. N equals 1, right? But I can see that being a common response.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. I want to get into this question. And Jason, you kind of responded to this in the chat, but I want to ask this question because I think this is a really interesting nuance of AI, an interesting nuanced field. If we have students who are developing their critical thinking, but jump right into using AI to create their work, is critical thinking developed and expanded on, or what?
Yeah, I think that I think this definitely I will answer it with it depends, right? But again, if we're utilizing it to be lazy, just to call a spade, if we're utilizing it to be lazy to get the work done, that's where my concern is, because now we lack critical thought. Now we lack a critical thought process. We're just plug and chug at that point. We're not in the position to actually learn the subject matter. We're not in the position to actually deep dive into it, interview people, create what we need to create to be the true maker of it. But for some people, some individuals, and I'll fall into this category occasionally as well, right? Where like maybe you're a visual learner or you're an audible learner, or right. That's why video, like YouTube's so popular, right? Because it hits on all those senses. If you have writer's block, you can use it, right, to get over that stumbling block. But there is a pitfall. It can be addictive. You can utilize it to a degree where I feel, this is my opinion, that it could potentially make us dumber or less intellectual. Okay. Now it can absolutely educate us, just like, kicking the doors open to the World Wide Web did, 25 years ago, let's say. My concern is that if we're just utilizing it to write papers, let's say, that's where I have a big concern, because we lack critical thought. And even in our interview process with new hires and stuff, we talk about that. And we ask you right out, like, what is your stance on things like ChatGPT? And we'll list off different experiential type questions, because what we want to do is we want to get their take on it. But you're going to ask those, you should be asking those same questions about, hey, if you entered a situation and it was like this, like you have a choice, right? It's choose your own adventure. You chose to cross the street and avoid the situation, and you have a reason why, or you choose to be headstrong and just barrel on in through. Like, again, you've got to be able to ask the questions and answer the questions that are of critical thought. And my fear is that that's going to continue to go away if it's relied upon.
I think it's probably safe to say generally that that laziness and critical thought are on opposite sides of the spectrum, right? So and don't get me wrong, I think that the ability to automate through AI, the ability to make rote tasks that much less taxing is phenomenal. And I think that that aspect of it, that, lazy, like all good programmers are lazy, totally great, right? Lazy, like, a high school sophomore is lazy, perhaps not so much, right? but I think that those two fall on the opposite side of the spectrum. And I think the question is like, how do you, I'm not an academic. I don't, I don't teach anybody but my team and people who come to my talks. Right. But I wonder, like, I wonder what the methodology becomes to turn the kind of rote generation of content into something that then elicits critical thought, so that for those who aren't lazy, you can actually make it make it a tool, right?
Make it a teaching tool.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something, and Will, having spent time with Julia, you probably get this from her too, because she is very much an educator, as she is a content creator and a public speaker and an author. Like, she is very good at these things, and we have this internal kind of goal to start to be able to teach educators how to teach students how to use AI. And one of the really nice features of content at scale that's like above and beyond, like ChatGPT, is that there are things that tell you, like, here's what you're missing from a quality piece of digital content. You are missing media. You are missing this headline. You are missing these factors. And so you can use those elements to educate people how to write proper and more engaging digital content. And I think we need to kind of have this movement in education in general, and this is my personal opinion, around educating our students how to create digital content. I think we're still kind of in a little bit of an old world mentality of writing proper educational pieces, but everyone that graduates from high school and college these days will be creating digital content, period. So I think if we can use these tools and use AI as an educational piece, then we won't be so scared that our students are using it to create it for them, rather than like create their draft and they can take it from there. So and Will, you were just saying I only educate people who listen to me and come to my talks, but like, that's where it starts. Like, that's where the education of this starts, right? Like, is being on the podcast and doing these public engagements, but bringing it up in conversation is how we start to plant the seed in the minds of educators around how these tools don't necessarily need to be feared, but we can use it to further the education of our up and comers. So, and okay, so let me go back into the chat, because there was, and somebody, Brett F, even asked, like, how do we teach how to use AI effectively? So both of you are very prominent public speakers. So how do you think we teach people how to use AI effectively?
This is my first. It depends, I think. But
it's your second.
Yep. That's my second.
We were keeping tally.
Thinking SEO, as I tell you.
I know.
But I think that effective is the challenging word there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's what do you want? What is the effect you want, right? If the effect is to process data that you already possess, then that's a different kind of effective. If it's to create a compelling, 5-part email nurture sequence, that's a different kind of effective. So I think that there's, not suggesting I've done that. Maybe. But I think that's effective is in the eye of the beholder. But the first thing is to start with like helping people understand that the machines not only are only trained on what they've been fed, which is why there's so much concern about bias in the output, but also that they are trained to give an answer, right? And it's like, it's like Cliff Clavin on Cheers. I think he's old enough to remember that, where he's going to give, and I've been guilty of this myself, a really authoritative sounding answer that is completely wrong because he made it up in the moment, right? And the machines are like that because they've been trained to give an answer, even if they don't have the wherewithal to back it up.
Yeah, I think what it boils down to is also going back to the educator part. This is all of our jobs, right? To be talking about these things, get out in front of it. It doesn't matter what the emerging tech is. Are we going to push it to the side and say, nope, that doesn't exist? Or are we going to address it and say, it's a thing and here's how we're going to use it? But I also think too, instead of maybe approaching it from the standpoint of, how we're using it, or how we're prompting it. I can't remember the exact question. Sorry, but it's more of my approach is this. Depending on the size of your team and what you do is I've been in a lot of discussions where people have said, well, how are we using AI? Well, hold on a minute. Let's set that on the shelf for a minute. And let's ask the question of, what are the bottlenecks in your day-to-day? What's holding you back? If I could remove one or two things from your day-to-day job role or function so that you could actually focus on executing things that really matter and really move the needle, and you can outline those and provide them to me, then I can look at that and say, is that something that an AI can solve for? Some piece of automation, something in my tech stack? Like, we should be asking those questions anyways. So we should continue to be a good human and a good steward and good business leader in general, and not say, ooh, what can AI do for me? No. Ask of your team, of your brand, what are the bottlenecks? Are there things that we need to streamline? And then reverse that around and say, okay, is that something that this tool or this generative AI component can assist us with?
Yes, all around.
There's a question in the chat that I think is worth just like super quick attention.
Sure.
From Chris H, where he calls out I presume he calls out, and the headline hook of this webinar was, can AI really write like a human?
That hook was written by AI, Chris.
Yeah.
No.
But I think that so going back to my earlier discussion about writing a story to create a persona, by fully fleshing out a persona, and I've done this in multiple iterations in multiple ways. One of my favorites is to feed the AI articles that have been written by the person whom I want to mimic, and then asking for it to create in that voice. That's one way in which it can really write like a human. Now, it's still going to have some of the fuzziness, right? Like the most AI tends to be a little bit fluff and filler rich. But the other question, what do we do with AI detected content? That depends. I think Jason spoke to that in their organization with the idea that if you want to use AI to help do your creative, make sure that you disclose it and make sure that you fact check it. And in my perspective, and this is what I've suggested to the content editors who work on my team, is if it's written with AI and it's not good, score it like you would score anything else that's not good. If it's written with AI and it's flipping awesome, then score it that way. And so I tend to be, even prior to seeing tools like Content at Scale, where they mix multiple models to actually try to make it sound more properly human. Even prior to that, I've never been afraid of publishing AI content as long as it's good, right? Because if you as a reader are going to start at the top and read to the bottom and be like, wow, I learned something there, machine, human, whatever.
It gets the point. It does the point. It makes the conversion. It keeps you engaged. And that's the point of content, right?
That's right.
Truly to its core. Okay.
Chris, did that help? Give us a like thumbs up in the chat if that was helpful.
Thumbs up from me too, because I actually wrote that headline, not AI. Thank you very much. But maybe AI can write as good as my headlines. I don't know.
That's right.
Right. Well, I can't believe it's been an hour already. It always goes so fast when we do these really engaging conversations. Jason and Will, thank you both so much for your time. You're seriously two of my most favorite people. But where can your new fans, where can they find you? Jason, where can people find you and BlackTruck Media?
Yeah, so obviously blacktruckmedia.com. Pretty much any social platform is at DodgeJD. If you're still on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it, Threads everywhere, LinkedIn as well. You'll be able to find me there too.
Great. And Will?
Searchinfluence.com is my primary home. But if you go Google Will Scott SEO, you'll find all of my socials. And if you don't put the SEO on there, you'll get Stifler and some country musician and whatever else. So Will Scott SEO, and you'll find all of my social handles, and I would love to engage.
Great. And same thing with Content at Scale. You can find us on all the socials at Content at Scale. We actually have a 2-hour mega webinar happening in December. So if you're tuned in and want to join, keep your eyes out on your email and the socials for that announcement. We have 5 panelists that are pretty amazing. So I can't wait to have that conversation too, and hope all of you guys can join us as well. Everyone in the US, I hope you have a fabulous, fabulous Thanksgiving next week. Enjoy the time with your friends and family. And until next time, we will see you soon. Thank you both again. It's been a great conversation. Have a
Thanks,
great day,
man.
everybody.
Thanks,